Good morning. So today I'm going to go over how I'm going to be doing a couple of brakes on my trailer. I've got two 7,000 pound axles here, and the way I know that is I bought this trailer brand new, which is probably hard to believe. It's a 2011 trailer, but we can see a lot of salt and sand on our roads because we are in a cold climate. I'm here in Canada, more specifically Sherwood Park, Alberta, and I'm going to be removing the 8 lug nuts from each of these axles and removing the plates, removing the castle nuts, pulling the old, behind there'll be a backing plate and a complete brake assembly. So I'm going to be removing all of that. And excuse me, I forgot to turn on my mic. Okay, so that's now on, so hopefully you guys will be able to hear me better. So I'm going to gather up some of the supplies I need, some of the tools I need, and let's get into it. So I have here, I've already done the passenger side of the trailer, and today I'm going to be doing the driver's side. And as I hold this tool in place, you'll see this will sit, well, it'll make more sense probably as I start to do the job, but I have gathered some of the tools that I need already. So I need to remove the wheels. That's step one, and I've already got it up. You probably can't see it because I've got the camera set to my face, but you will be able to see it after I remove the wheels. I've already got it jacked up, and I used this little 3.5 ton jack for that, and it's up and off the ground. So hopefully this will go reasonably well. The other side had some fights, and I'm going to try to bridge all these videos together, but I am kind of new to videography, so I definitely apologize for my inexperience, but let's get into it. Sometimes you lose a little bit in these extensions, so I'm going to try. I might get lucky here. Remove the extension, and I'm going to get more power to that nut. Like so. One thing that I like to do to protect the threads, because I plan on saving these brake drums, is once I remove the tire, I'm going to put all of these lug nuts right back on the drum assembly. So they don't have to go all the way tight, just enough to cover the start of the threads, because if I'm not careful, what can happen is I can mash these threads, and you can fix that by chasing the threads if you have a cast and die set, but that's a massive amount of time that you don't have to waste by just putting these nuts right back on top of here and protecting it. So now if it falls, it'll hit the nut. If it hits the nut, leaves a mark on the nut, that's fine. Some guys will go to brand new nuts, and these nuts, if I'm being honest, they've definitely shown some wear. So for demonstration purposes of this video, I'm going to be reusing these nuts, but in all reality, as soon as I have the opportunity, I'm going to probably replace these with new. So there's one. Let's do the next one. One wheel removed. We're still a long ways away from out of the weeds. Sometimes that can happen to a guy where it does not want to come out of your socket. And if that does happen to you, or what I generally like to do is just get it started on the thread a little bit, pull it off, done. I mean, a lot of people that are going to watch this video probably have decent amount of experience doing these types of things. Most DIYers do, but in case you're brand new, that often works well. One of the reasons I wanted to do this video is I have watched a bunch of videos on YouTube that I've watched is generally of new and nice, or relatively new and relatively nice trailers that haven't seen a lot of road salt, haven't seen a lot of issues that you see in places that are cold. This one's gonna fight me the whole way, I can just tell. So I'm gonna try to get all of these off of here. And once I have them all off, that one's tight. One thing that I do to protect the threads on these brake drums, because generally speaking, yes, they see salt and road wear and grime and everything else. I don't feel like I have to change them every time. Once I remove it, I'll look at it for wear. If you look closely, you can see like the threads. I don't know if you can see it or not. The camera is set on my face. You can see that the threads themselves are good. I hope that shows up okay in the video. Now, that said, once I remove it, I'll have a better idea. So I need a mallet, and probably a scraper of some kind would be ideal. So let's see if we can find those things. Scraper, mallet. And excuse me, I'm going to try to gently remove these covers because they are aluminum, they are easy to damage. Okay, so I might damage these on the way out. When they get this bad, I mean, if I have to get rid of them. I have to get them off of the trailer. So if they get damaged on the way out, it just means I got to go spend $3 or $4 and get new ones. But I have to get them off, and in order to get to the castle nut that's behind it. So let's see if I can't find a way to do that. I might have a little chisel here in my sea can. Even better yet. So let's try again. Yeah, this is gonna be a replace cap. That's okay. So obviously you don't want to replace things if you don't have to, but what you see here is the castle nut, and this one has a cotter pin behind the castle nut. Behind that you're gonna see a, let's see if I can get this on gimbal lock. You're gonna see there's the castle nut, that's this guy. There's the cotter pin, there's the thread end, there's the grease zerk or grease nipple. There's a washer here. In behind this is the outer bearing. Inside of this will be an inner bearing. It all sits on the spindle and allows this brake hub to spin, which holds the tire on the trailer. So I have to remove this cotter pin, and usually what I use to do that is pair of needle nose pliers to flatten this, and a hammer to get on this little groove and hammer it out. So let's get after it. And of course, I don't have my needle nose pliers. Oh no, there they are. And multiple sets of tools, which I'm sure most of you guys do. Please forgive my messy sea can / tool crib. So let's get into it. So I'm going to see if I can focus this onto the part that we're going to work on here. I've got active tracking enabled. I don't know how to disable it. Okay, so we've got that. I'm going to focus here onto the piece that I'm going to be doing the work on. Try to get you guys nice and close up to this guy so you can kind of see what's happening here. For the DIYer that maybe hasn't done this ever before or wants to tackle this, it's not an expensive process, but it does take a little bit of knowledge. So I think we're good here. So I've got it sort of trained in here as best as I can get it. Maybe I could even do it a little bit better here. Okay, so I'm going to try to focus here on the castle nut on the... So I've got, this is called the cotter pin, and what I need to do is, you can see how it's gone through that space. That's just to hold the castle nut in place. This castle nut will be finger tight. It should be removable. It's not super torqued up. And these brakes are, I would say that they are probably still 50%, but because of the road conditions that we have where I'm from, I'm going to go forward and change them. Okay, so I've got that sort of as best as I can. What you can see here is I've got one set of the jaw of the needle nose pliers through the cotter pin, and now I'm going to take a hammer and I'm going to drive up from the bottom, and that should help to bring this out. Now I got to back it up because I'm right on the edge of that. Brake hub assembly. Okay, now that I'm through, I can rebite this. I'm going to try to reposition the camera just slightly so we got a bit of a more full view here, and I'm going to continue to hammer this out. Okay, so that's out, and now, because this is all covered in grease, and I don't want my hands all covered in grease, I need some nitrile gloves. So, bear with me a minute. I'm going to go grab those, and I think I have them in my pickup truck. I just go with, what have I got here? Mediacom Vulcan nitrile gloves. Some of them have like a chalk inside, just like prevents them from sticking to your hands if you're trying to remove them later, because when you're doing a job, your hands are gonna perspire slightly, and without that, they generally get pretty stuck to your hands. I've used the Monkey gloves. I've used any number of gloves. I like these ones because they're reasonably inexpensive and not by any means sponsored by anybody. Just a guy who needs stuff, just like I'm sure you are. And now when I go home at the end of the day, my hands aren't going to be covered in grease, because this is a dirty job. But you know what? While we're here, we did one, and instead of just doing one at a time, I'm going to do this process in tandem. So there's number one, here's number two. Let's see if I can just adjust it slightly so that you can see what's going on with the wheel. Let's get into it. So I'm going to try, if I can, get behind this and start grooving it out. So this one I was able to save. I think the other one I foolishly hammered in too hard, and you can see here that there is a lip on the inside. So don't make my mistake. Just very gently get behind this. It should come off fairly easily. And in the future, hopefully I watch this video if I do this job again and learn from that mistake as well. So I'm just going to try to bend it back as best as possible so that it's reasonably straight, and that way when I get a hammer on it I should be able to get some good traction on sending it out. And this one I'm going to do different than the last one. So the last one I grabbed it here, which I'm going to do again. I'm going to grab it here, but I'm going to hammer it from the bottom and see if that, yeah, I already like that way more. Now I'm kind of as far as I can go here. Obviously be careful when you're hammering not to damage this zerk. If you damage it, or grease nipple, it's not the end of the world. You can replace these. This will have a little, probably a 3/16 nut head that just removes, twists off, and you're off to the weeds. Now these old cotter pins I will not reuse. I will use brand new cotter pins, but everything else I will replace. And what I like to do when I remove these is I like to remove them, put them right back into these caps where they're clean on the inside. They are sort of keeping it all together. So you might have to call me a liar. I don't know. Okay, there we go. So this is now castle nut, and once this is removed, I'm going to very gently pull the brake drum assembly, which all comes as a piece, off of the spline. Carefully grab the washer and the outer bearing, which should just fall out. And then guys talk about it that you inspect these. Well, I have done this job not that long ago, and I do these jobs fairly frequently just because of where I'm at. So I would trust this bearing short of, yeah, everything is good in here. So I'm going to repack this with by hand, but I'm going to put this back in the way it came out. So I've got my washer. It has, so outer bearing, washer, and castle nut. I'm going to put them right back in the exact order that they came out. Flat into my cap. I'm going to put my cap off to the side. And now I can slide this brake drum right off. Boom. And I'm literally, so I'm going to inspect the inside. And you can see, like, it's a little groove, but there's a solid 1/4 inch there before it's going to have any issues with the lug nuts in place. What will happen on some trailers is this brake assembly will start to rub and wear out the drum. I'm nowhere near that territory with these drums, not even close. You can see there's a lot of soot. So 13/16 bolts to remove the tires, 9/16 socket size bolts to remove this backing plate, and then you have the electrical wires, which I will generally just take side cutters or pliers, or in my case, because they're right here in my hand, needle nose pliers. But before I get my hands all over these tools and get them covered in grease, I need paper towel for my hands. So I'm going to go wash my hands. I'm going to go grab a small roll of paper towel, and I'm going to continually wipe my hands so that I don't get my tools all disgusting, so that at the end of the day I don't have as much time to waste cleaning up. Bear with me. Great. So that one's done. Now we're going to grab our next cap, remove the castle nut again. Like you can see, I haven't put any wrenches on here. Granted, it seems to be snagging on something, just maybe a piece of sand, or who knows. There's something that's not happy. So I'll make sure that before these castle nuts go back on, clean these threads really well and make this a little bit easier for myself on the reinstall. The other thing is these brake drums are cast iron, and you'll see there's like rust that's built up, kind of like when you do a weld with a MIG welder, that you hammer off the soot. I guess stick's the same. You hammer off the, I'm sure there's a proper name for it that I'm butchering, but you hammer it off after you've welded it. and this is tight. So it would suggest that there maybe is an internal issue here. Sometimes a brake pad will break off. I don't think there was, but we're gonna find out. This trailer is not connected to anything, so it shouldn't really technically be hanging on. But something is forcing this thing to hang on. So I might just get a little bit of a pry bar to help me assist in the removal of that brake drum. Bear with me a minute. Sorry guys. Like I said, I'm learning the gizmos and the gadgets and the tech. There we go, we're back. Something is obviously not right here, because you should not have to do this. But I'm happy for moments like this, because it shows issues that could arise if you were to hire somebody to do this job and they give you a time and you go on YouTube and you go, oh, that job should have only taken you 10 minutes to do, and you're charging me way more. And again, I'm not a mechanic or anything either, so I really don't care. I'm just another DIY guy. Doing little jobs that I feel I can do myself, save a penny, or if you have the time and the tools to do the jobs yourself, which I think a lot of us, it's fairly rewarding to do. Even if you have the money to do it yourself, you have some peace of mind that you did it, you learn the process. That guy is really stuck on there for some strange reason. There's literally nothing that should be holding that there, but for whatever reason, it does not want to let go. So it's probably good that I'm changing it. Although it's probably not good that I didn't change it sooner, because it would appear that that's probably giving me really terrible mileage when I'm trailering with this unit, because the brakes are definitely working, and I was doing a lot of surging the brakes yesterday, and that might have been part of my issue today when I was changing the other side. But this shouldn't be like this. So what it suggests to me is probably a bad internal component. So and I forgot one of the things that I was talking about before, which was to, put the nuts back onto the drum hub assemblies. I might edit that out, I might leave it in. I probably should just leave it in, because if I'm being honest, this is a great example of what could go wrong when you do yours. So, I mean, you're not as sidelined when you're not somewhere that has absolutely perfect weather year-round, pristine conditions, pristine everything, and you're just doing a brake check. Like, I think there's a lot of states where you're supposed to change these every year. This is definitely an every year routine check for me. That said, for guys on the farms and places where you're not necessarily on massively public roads all the time, this is one heck of a head scratcher, guys. Does not make any sense. Okay, I think we're getting traction finally. Oh, that was extremely slow and painful, but we got there. But what I don't know is, where did I put the castle nut? Okay, there it is. Okay, good. So I put everything back in here like it came off. And this brake drum's gonna come off. We're gonna see right away. What in the heck is going on here? And by right away, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. Well, that's really strange. So everything on there was okay. Everything inside of the brake drum appears okay. And the inner bearing appears okay. I don't know why that was hanging on so hard. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a hammer and obviously hammer off all of this corrosion. Look at it just peeling off of there. But there's still a lot of meat on the drum itself. So, and because the sockets are the wheel studs, feel like they're really good still, and there's still tons of meat behind that plate. It doesn't make sense for me, in my opinion, to change these. Maybe in the comments, if there's a reason why I should change these, let me know. But from everything I can see, the inner bearing feels good. The studs have lots of meat. Like, there's a solid 1/4 inch of plate there still that would be rubbing on the magnet. I don't see a reason to change these. And I'm a huge proponent of, if it isn't broken within reason, don't fix it. Now, one of the reasons you might be asking me is, well, if your brakes are at 50%, why would you change them? And I have a reason for that. I didn't know, and I probably should have known, but I didn't know this, that they have come out with self-adjusting brake assemblies. Excuse me. These are the old school style of manual adjust, where you take a screwdriver in from behind and you turn the screw, and that opens and closes the spring, which then increases or decreases tension. If you look at these brakes, there's still a lot of meat on that. If I went and got my vernier, there is, boy, 3/8 almost of brake pad on this drum still, and or on this brake assembly rather. This one has a little bit less, which you'd expect. It's the front axle. You're braking, the front axle is going to see a little bit more braking action. And one thing that I ran into is on the other side, I was fighting these. These were not wanting to turn off. They were not wanting to turn out, rather. They were just spinning on the back side, which meant that they spun in the hole. And how I got around that is I took an angle grinder. After removing these springs, taking the brakes off, cutting the wires, I took an angle grinder right down the center of the stud, right back to release the nut on either side, and then just hammered them off of the screw because they'd rust seized themselves onto them. I gotta say, there's some of the hazards of working in a cold climate or trailering or any number of things. You just have so many rust issues, which really slows down a job. But again, the reason why I made this video is so that some people would understand, like, hey, there's a little bit more to this than a 5 or 10 minute job, depending on where in the world you live and the applications that you operate in. If you have a camper and you only ever take it in the summertime and it never sees road salt, granted there's still calcium, which is really rust, it'll do a lot of damage for rust if you get it on a rainy day on the gravel roads at campgrounds. Yeah, this job is not generally as easy as some people think it is. And I think that I had a 9/16 socket that I may have forgotten in the back of my truck. Hopefully it's not missing forever. But The next thing I need is a 9/16 socket for the next part of the project. And when I looked at my toolbox, I didn't put it back where it belongs, which, as you can see, I have, well, I guess you can't see this part because I didn't tell you guys. So I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home. So at a certain time of the day, where I used to spend an hour or two tidying and organizing, I would rather spend with my boys and with my wife. So it's one of those things where I need to get better at time management, but at the same time, I will never value this equipment over my wife or my boys. So I'm sure there's a lot of people in the world that could relate to that. It's beautiful to have work and it's beautiful to have equipment and be blessed by things, but when those things become a higher priority, then the family that you have and the kids that you have, or the wife that you have, or significant other that you have, I would argue you're going to run into problems in a hurry. So anyways, okay, so we got the 9/16. I think I want a pair of side cutters. I want to give myself as much opportunity for success here as I can, and I'm going to remove the set springs on the trailer. That's the first move I'm going to make. So I'm going to remove these guys. Neil knows they might not have what it takes, so I'm going to try the pliers next. Is I want these guys removed, and if you don't have pliers but you have a grinder, you could just take a grinder and grind these clean off, and that works great. But to make it a little bit cleaner, I'm using a pair of pliers. It's a little bit quieter too. There's that spring in place, and then there's these little spring doohickeys. I'm sure they have a technical name to them, but I need to turn that in such a way that it releases on this pin. Again, if you have a grinder, you lack some patience, you can just grind that off as well. And it might be faster for you, or slower, I don't know. I would argue that this is probably a little safer than getting your grinder in there, just because you don't have a whole lot of room. But you will definitely probably see me getting out the grinder at some point on this project, because if it's anything like the other side was, they're not going to come off willingly. Okay, so that spring set is off. So you have these two little springs, you have these springs, and then that just slides right off. I mean, look at the meat on that still. It's kind of a shame. Should almost, I don't know if there's any salvage worth. I don't know if I should save those brakes, but there's a lot of brake there still. Okay. I might actually clean this one up and put it back together and just have it as a, I don't know, just a case brake. I mean, it's not like you're going to do this on the side of the road, I don't think, but let's see how well she comes off. So I'm going to grab my extension because this spindle is covered in grease, and I don't want to cover my tools in grease if I don't have to. Again, like earlier in the video, as you add extensions, you lose, oh, let's bring it back. As you add extensions, you lose some power just going to those. So let's see if this is actually going to spin off for me nice, or if it's going to be a fight. I did two yesterday. So I did one of them, I sprayed with a penetrating oil the day before, thinking that that was going to make my life easier. It actually had the opposite effect. It just spun in the hole, it didn't make it better. So far, I'm already ahead of yesterday. Sort of. could just stand on the impact, but I don't want to, because I think what's back there backing this are stud bolts, which means that they sit in a little frame, and if I just continually add impact to it, what could happen is if I hit a piece of debris or something in the threads and it hooks, it could just spin the hole out. I'm trying to avoid that. Excuse me. This one is starting to get a little tight, so I went back on. Now I'm going to go back off. Sweet. Okay, so that went a lot better than any of the other, well, than the other two that I had done. So now, because this brake assembly is in the best condition out of all of the other ones that I have removed so far, I'm going to carefully remove this in a different way than I did the other two. The other two I just totally mangled the whole inside, didn't care, ground it up, hacked it up, didn't matter. This one, because I think that this brake assembly is still pretty good, I am probably just going to clean this up really well and keep it on the shelf as a replacement in case I have a failure on one of the other systems. So here's the dealio, is there's two wires back here that I'm going to cut for resplicing purposes. So instead of cutting them in the front like I did the previous, I'm going to cut the two wires that are going to the electromagnetic back here so that those wires are in place and reusable down the line in case I want to. So, of course, these needle nose pliers are just absolutely terrible. Oh, there we go, I think. There we go. This is struggling to get onto the actual cutting portion of the needle nose pliers. Side cutters are just so much better because you have the cutting action right at the front. Okay, so this guy has been removed. I'm going to carefully clean this up after the fact. Get this all put back together, reinstall the brake pads. That's a whole different deal. That has nothing to do with the purposes of this video. Okay, so now what I have in place are these three bolts, and I think a guy could be tempted to reuse these. I'm not going to. I'm going to hammer them out and replace them with brand new. There is a theory that over time bolts stretch or stress out. I would argue that knowing the history of this trailer, it's probably not an issue that I need to worry about. But here's what I mean when I say that it's a stud style of bolt. I don't know if that's going to zoom in or not. It has a round head, so trying to get onto that after it has slipped in the hole is very difficult. And that's why what you saw me do was take an angle grinder right down the middle of this stud, right to clear off the nut on either side to remove the brakes for my trailer. So now what I need to do is clean this up really well, but I'm going to do the other one because I mean, we're here, we got the tools, we got the tech, we got some momentum. Let's carry on and see if we have as much success with the next one as with this one. So let's I'm going to see if I can get it trained in a little bit more on the piece. No, it's not ideal when you slide your socket on and rust starts falling off. The other thing that I saw or read in comments that I'm going to do on this video, out of the previous style video of guys doing this, is I'm going to put a very tiny amount of grease on the adjustment thread to try in hopes that it'll protect it. My only fear is, because we go out on wet roads and salt and grime, so I may not do it, is I don't want the grease to end up on the brake surface at all. That's really, really a bad situation. So I don't know. Obviously, I'll try to fast forward this part of the video. In the editing process. Got greedy. This one's now spinning in the hole, so I'm gonna have to grind that one out. Repeat that before. This is when the grinder becomes really attractive. Is when you turn this and you turn this and you turn this and you turn this, and it's a fight continuously. Just get out your grinder. Man. While I'm cleaning this, I'm obviously going to inspect the spindle for any signs of damage or wear. If this spindle goes bad, this one appears to me like it's a complete axle replacement. I don't know if all trailers are like that. I think this one's definitely like that. At some point I'm probably going to want to revisit looking at these springs and making adjustments there as well. This isn't a super used all the time trailer, but it does go out in some pretty bad weather, so it is important that it is mechanically sound. Let's get it trained in on the work at hand. So clean all the grease off, and then on the reinstall I'm going to obviously be going over this. Well, maybe not obvious, but I'm going to be putting brand new grease over the spindle, over the bearings, and really packing this up with some nice new fresh grease. But first things first, I gotta get that bolt off of there. So bear with me a minute. And I've run into an issue that's fairly common. I need a little more disc to get that angle of attack that I need to get in the hole. So I'm going to go grab a bigger grinder with a bigger disc. what I have on here, it's called the Walter disc, and it's a cutting disc, but they say that you can also grind with these discs, and I have to say I have been incredibly impressed with these blades. And what I'm holding in my hand is probably hard to tell from the video, but this grinder is an absolute monster. This 9060 DBL, this is an unbelievably nice grinder, but because of where I'm going and how I need to go, I would argue it's incredibly dangerous as well. So I should really have a face shield for using this, and I'm not sure where it is, but I think I'm going to go take a minute to find it. I think the next video I'm gonna do is gonna be of me cleaning my sea can. But nevertheless, let's get into this thing. Face shield, definitely a good idea. Okay, so that basically just melted that off. And I don't know if I got all of the nut off. I don't think I'm all the way there, but I might get lucky and it made this hammer separate. Yeah. Now, after you ground like that, you got to be careful because that piece is going to be hot like crazy. So I'm just going to take a pair of pliers and see if I can gently coerce it off of there. Well, it might be where my luck ends, we'll see. What I'm doing there is I'm fatiguing the metal. And I think I got enough. Tap that off of there. Maybe I don't. So this is some of the stupidity you can encounter. Is the cost of living somewhere cold and nasty. On top of the stupidity of living somewhere cold and nasty. But I know there's a lot of us. I suppose there's other problems living in the heat, like AC systems that stop working and power outages, and there's really no perfect all the time situation. One thing I will say that I like about where I live is we get all 4 seasons and we get the real deal. We get snow, we get fall, we get, there we go. Okay, so that's out. Okay, so that was a lot more painful than I would have liked. But alas, we're out of the weeds. Done. Next, I'm going to go grab my drill and I'm going to clean up all of this rust and crap that's stuck on here so that I've got a better mating surface for the new brakes. What I have in my hands are 3 different options. So I've got this stiff wire brush. I've got this super stiff grinder wire brush. These are nice, but they're also annoying because little hairs of these will fly off at your hands. And while they do a good job, they are also not the most pleasant to work with. And then a soft style wire brush. So I'm going to start with this guy and the drill and see how good of a job it does. And if it does a satisfactory job, I'm going to call that good enough. Can't smell it, but there's a lot of crap in there. I probably should have a mask on, and I would recommend a mask if you're doing a job. Not only to you, but to myself, to my future self. Next time. This is just after the whole COVID pandemic, for crying out loud. Which, I mean, the whole trust the science is kind of a funny joke because I don't know too many scientists that trust the science. They're constantly revisiting, rechecking, challenging. But for whatever reason, when big government meets big corporation meets political interest, you get statements like trust the science. You get lazy statements that people like to jump on top of. That's just an aside. I'm not saying you're not entitled to have your opinion. Oh, to the contrary, I want you to have an opinion. But that's just mine. I've never met a scientist, a true scientist, that believed that they were 100% right. Especially over a short period of time. Okay, so I'm getting happy-ish with that. Now I'm going to do the next one. This time, I'm going to clean some of the soot off first. Maybe give it a couple love taps with the hammer. And I'm okay with the job that did. That was new 2 years ago. Just crazy. Okay, so I'm happy-ish with that. Sweet. Next. Now, the next part of this process is getting this all cleaned, super clean. And for that, I'm going to go grab a couple of rags. What you can see back here are the wires. What I'm actually going to do before I put the brake assemblies on is I will strip these back a little bit and put butt connectors on them to make my job a little easier on the wiring portion of the project. Bear with me a minute. Now, an argument could be made for sure that this would do the absolute best job, and I think I may just demonstrate that really quickly. Now, you got to be careful to read the instructions on these, because this one says right on it, max 2,000 RPM. So I would want to put it on a big guy like this that can do 6,000 RPMs. That's a recipe for disaster. So put, you know, the right attachment on the right unit. Protect yourself at all times. And I mean, even this might be pushing it. What does this say? Type 2. Yeah, this is dangerous too. It says right on here, type 2, 7,000 and 7,000 per minute. Now I don't know exactly what that means, but I would argue that this is dangerous. So I'm going to try it carefully. I'm going to grab my mask and, oh boy, I didn't realize that I got crap on the lens. Anyways, I'm going to demonstrate this carefully, and because I'm exceeding the rotation limit, I'm going to wear a mask. Okay, so you can see that isn't grinding, but that is doing a really nice job of polishing the hole. Okay, now it's started to do some grinding. while I have it at this stage, I may as well do both. Okay, so now I have a very nice surface for the new brakes to apply to, but I've also got some crap on the camera lens, so I'm going to very carefully bring that with me and clean that off with a nice clean rag. Oh, my apologies. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to clean this up really nice, get all those metal shavings off of there. Really important when you put your bearings back on that you don't have any metal shavings whatsoever in your bearings. That will cause all kinds of premature wear and maintenance issues that you don't want going on your trailer. So cleanliness is next to godliness in terms of repacking, re-greasing, and reinstalling. Don't need my mask anymore. That part of the job is done, thankfully. I'm just putting a little bit of extra time getting this as cleaned up as possible. And I'm even going to grab some brake clean. What that's going to do. I'm getting the grease off of these spindles. I call that one good. Let's move to the next one. Brake Clean is a very powerful cleaner, and it just does a really good job of cleaning up parts. I mean, you could use what you have. Gasoline would work well. So would diesel. But what I like about Brake Clean is it evaporates pretty quickly, and it does a really, really good job. I would argue out of the three, Brake Clean does the best job in my pretty significant margin. It kind of cleans as well as it's evaporating, which is another thing I like about it. Hello, Joshua speaking. From who? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it would be, but again, I'm out of season. So I'm not busy in the winter. I'm busy in the summer. So I'm not looking for any sort of short-term employees at any point in the near future. Maybe like June, July, August, I may consider it. So I appreciate the call because you've refreshed my memory there. But I am not looking for anything actively right now. Absolutely. Thank you for the phone call. You too. Thanks a lot. Okay, so somebody was phoning me about temporary labor, but right now it is January 30th. Generally it's about minus 25. Really cold, really not pleasant, and I don't have any need for employees right now. So it's nice that people are thinking about reaching out to me and that service is potentially available, because there are definitely jobs where it'd be nice to have some extra help, but I am not currently in need of that extra help. So don't mind me as I go on a wild goose chase. The parts I was nearly certain I put in my truck. Darn it all anyways. Well, I see them. However, I've got to do something because the camera is about to die. And I got my handy dandy battery pack. However, excuse me, don't mind me while I just hack my lungs out. I may not have the right cord. Make this play nice. Because this is the old school style. It's got the USB ends, but the only input is USB-C, and my camera is USB-C. I thought I grabbed it too, but this is why taking more videos makes you better at your job. So now it's saying down to 1%. However, there might be a little bit of jam. I don't think there's any jam, but I'm going to find out. There might be a little bit of jam in this. It's saying no. Let's find out, shall we? Definitely doesn't recognize that as having any power. And the weird thing is, I plugged in this camera last night. Handle is 0.